on defence this year. That comes as Russia's war against Ukraine enters its third year. And it is Valentine's Day, so we thought we'd bring you a look at the lions at Whipsnade Zoo. They've had a treat today. In fact, the perfect Valentine's treat, as the public has showered them with scented gifts. The zoo asked people to donate their unused fragrances, which apparently, when sprayed on sacks filled with straw or on tree stumps or clumps of grass, create enticing scent trails for the big cats. Zookeepers say the smell of perfumes and aftershaves enhances the lions' sensory experiences and encourages them to explore. For the very latest stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Watching those headlines, some of those stories, it's getting more and more difficult now, isn't it, to distinguish between some sort of film set and scene and real life. You've got crossbows in there, stabbings, absolutely horrendous. What is going on in our country? It's like the Wild West out there sometimes, isn't it, guys? Anyway, look, as also Polly was just mentioning, it is indeed Valentine's night tonight. I thought to myself, who do I want to spend this evening with? David Beckham, his best mate, maybe. They were not available. So you know what? I reached out to the next best thing. So I did the columnist at the Mail on Sunday. Peter Hitchens will be alongside me tonight, and the former Labour advisor, Matthew Larser. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
Guess what, everybody? One of my panel, I won't say which one, I'll maintain his confidentiality. He said he would only do my show tonight if I promised not to mention Valentine's Day. And I said, yes, of course. There's bigger and better things to talk about. And then I thought, you know what, this world is so full of doom and gloom. So if you can't have a moment to reflect nicely, what can we do? So with that in mind, look at this, everybody. Peter Hitchens, I got you a gift, an expression of love.
Oh, and that's
also,
my only Valentine, thank you.
I thought it'd be a bit mean if I didn't get you one as well. Just a little token of appreciation. You're all loved and admired by many of my viewers.
And we're very glad to be pictured
tonight. Yeah, there you go. You're very lucky. Men would pay to spend Valentine's Day with me. You two, you get it for free.
It's fantastic.
They're a lucky bunch, aren't they?
We are.
Modern welfare state.
Yeah, and there you go. I bet you can't guess which one of them didn't want to mention Valentine's Day, can you? I'll leave it to your imagination. Anyway, what's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with me all the usual ways, gbviews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet me, X me at gbnews. Now, I want to get stuck into quite serious matters because this is a massive show of force now. You've just been hearing about it as well in the bulletins. I'm talking, of course, about the NATO exercise now. There's going to be military drills. It's going to have about 90,000 troops. And it's got me wondering tonight, do you think that NATO is now more valuable and needed than ever before or not? Matthew Larser, where are you on it?
Absolutely. I think NATO is needed more than ever before, which is why Trump's comments at the weekend were disgraceful. It's been absolutely integral to our security and the security of America, as well as the other alliance members across Western Europe, and now expanding into Eastern Europe. And so, therefore, it's important that we support NATO wholeheartedly. They're right. The Americans are right. The European countries, including ourselves, need to step up and spend more, with the honourable exceptions of countries like Poland, which do already spend more as a percentage of their income than the States. But they're wrong to start saying...
And in a second, by the way, I'm going to play you what Donald Trump actually said in case anyone is not familiar with that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, he's you know, it's right that, I mean, Joe Biden as well has done the calls. And what's particularly depressing about it is now is the moment where spending is starting to go up, where people are beginning to take responsibility. Germany, largest economy in Europe, hasn't spent enough on defence for decades. Mixture of, you know, wanting to spend it on other things that win more votes more easily. And it's, you know, sort of historic debate in Germany about defence spending. Now is actually spending it up. You saw the Chancellor of Germany digging the first foundation of a new arms factory this week, which I didn't think I'd see with Social Democrat, Labour Chancellor doing that. So, yeah, we need NATO and we need to support it, and Trump endangers it.
Peter Hitchens, do you agree with Matt?
No. I was a tremendous supporter of NATO when we needed it, when there was a country called the Soviet Union, which had gigantic tank armies stationed in the centre of Europe pointing westwards and menacing us, and which also began in the 1980s to install medium-range nuclear missiles, also some menaces. And at that time, I used to annoy all my Liberal neighbours in Oxford by having a NATO sticker on my car. But when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, an event which I saw in Moscow, I thought, well, the facts have changed. I've changed my mind. And I thought that NATO should have been wound up then. What NATO is supposed to do now, I'm not absolutely sure. It's been rightly said that its expansion eastwards has created the very problem which it claimed to be defending us against. Tension in Central Europe has grown enormously thanks to this expansion and to other things which the United States has done. And I believe that the policy of eastward NATO expansion has led ultimately to the war which we now have in Ukraine. So, no, I'm not enthusiastic about these exercises, nor do I think people should overrate NATO. One of the reasons why it was successful was because its original aims were so limited. It settled on the territories which the Soviet Union had not taken over at Yalta in 1945, and it said, we will defend them. It basically said not one step further. But it acknowledged that there was a rival power in Europe, and it didn't go anywhere near that. The Soviet Union invaded Hungary, and it invaded Czechoslovakia, and it sent its tanks into Berlin in 1953, and NATO did absolutely nothing, because NATO had agreed that beyond a certain line it had no interest. The other thing that people must realise is that the fabled Article 4 of NATO, which promises a response by all in the event of one member being attacked, is nothing like as strong as people think it is. It doesn't commit the United States to military action if another NATO member is attacked.
Well, there's a couple of things.
The United States would never have signed it if it did. And there is a grave danger, and the history of Europe shows this, in making guarantees which you're not actually in a position to keep. So I don't think the expansion of NATO or its current state are doing anything much for us at all. That doesn't mean, by the way, that I endorse Donald Trump's oafish, moronic statements, because I don't.
We can agree.
Well, let's play these remarks that both my panel have dismissed already. So let's start with what Donald Trump had to say, which these guys are referring to.
Well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
Well, you two think that's nonsense. That sounds like common sense to me. Of course you've got to pay your bills.
It's not a country club. He thinks it's like Mar-a-Lago. You don't pay the fee to get in. There is an aim that everybody spends 2%, and it's right that countries step up. Frankly, most of the Northern European countries, and including Germany, will meet that over the next couple of years. The people who are kind of right down at the bottom are Spain and Portugal.
Yeah, but hold on. It was something like about 7 countries out of the 30
at the moment,
that paid. So if those countries don't value prioritising their funds into protecting their citizens, why should people like the US prioritise their fund in protecting those citizens?
Well, I think the European countries should spend more. In fact,
but they're not, and that's his point.
Well, they are. They're moving. All the graph shows that every country is increasing defence spending.
But his point is, in the here and now, they are not.
But
you
Michelle,
can't invite your enemies to come and bomb.
NATO's not a protection racket.
Exactly.
It's an alliance.
Yes.
And though, after all the things I've said about it and how its expansion has been a mistake, it's absurd to say that weak countries, which can't afford huge military expenditure, should be deprived of protection because they're weak and poor. The whole point
of it,
if the issue of NATO, which I would to some extent dispute this, if the issue of NATO is freedom versus tyranny, then it doesn't matter if the free country which you're defending is poor and can't afford to spend a large part of its GDP on defence. You still defend.
But am I wrong? Because I thought it was about 2%.
The Trump statement is.
But what is the percentage?
Is moronic.
But you're calling it a really large.
It's an enormous sum of money for these.
But it's 2% of their GDP.
We live in a comparatively rich country. But to start increasing our defence...
But it's 2% of their GDP, so it's relative.
Point, Michelle.
I know, but it's relative.
To start increasing our defence expenditure would mean either increasing taxes. I'm sure you enjoy paying taxes a lot, and everybody does, and people will flock out to vote for a government which increases their taxes, or it means taking money from something else. What do you want to take it from? Education? Policing?
But we pay our bills here.
We just about made 2% now. And
with that, what do? Half our armed forces are conked out most of the time, and they're much too small. So it really isn't. If we're relying on our ability to spend our way into the good books of Donald Trump to keep ourselves safe, we're in big trouble.
I'm in an island of one. Happens very often on this. But I like the island of one. It's quite a common sense island. I agree actually with Donald Trump that if you don't, or you weren't, or you're not willing to pay your way, why should everyone else step in anyway? There's another clip I want to play.
On principle, out of a moral moral principle that you defend the weak against the strong.
Yeah, but you don't pay
why.
bills with principle, do you? You don't go into your mortgage at a place and say, I ain't got no money, but I've got principle.
That's the whole
You get
point of
laughed
principle,
out.
isn't it? But then again, you don't give out of charity on the expectation. You don't give to charity on the expectation of getting something back from it, do you?
Look, there's another clip I want to bring in. You guys can have the final say and thought on the NATO Donald Trump thing. But a man you probably saw interviewed, Vladimir Putin, was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. One of the things I want to explore here, we're talking about is NATO needed more now than ever. It's about how prominent that actual threat is from Russia. Let's listen to what Putin had to say.
They're trying to fuel the Russian threat.
The threat I think you're referring to is a Russian invasion of Poland, Latvia, expansionist behavior. Can you imagine a scenario where you sent Russian troops to Poland?
Only in one case, if Poland attacks Russia. Why? Because we have no interest in Poland, Latvia, or anywhere else. Why would we do that? We simply don't have any interest.
So, I mean, Putin there, Peter, he's basically saying that all of these countries are running around whipping up this kind of what he was calling an imaginary threat from Russia for their own ends, really. Do you think he's got any interest, basically, in expanding his tentacles out?
Well, a lot of things have changed since the Ukraine war broke out. But you have to remember that I think there were 13 years after the Baltic states got their independence from the Soviet Union when they were not members of NATO. And I don't recall Boris Yeltsin threatening to invade them or invading them during that period. The same goes for the Eastern European countries, which joined NATO quite long after they'd been released from the Soviet prison. Russia is not the Soviet Union. And amongst other things, there were two crucial differences. One, it's not an ideological state. It doesn't want to impose a political philosophy on its neighbours. The other is it doesn't have global ambitions. And the third one, which is equally important, is it is broke. And it doesn't really have very much money, and its population is in decline. So it has limited abilities as a military power. And being, as it is, a very inefficient and corrupt country, it's not very good at fielding military forces.
But the original aim was
very nearly failed in
bring Russia
Ukraine.
into NATO.
Sorry?
There was a Partnership for Peace agreement. There was an original idea that you would bring a democratic Russia in, and let's hope that there is a democratic Russia so we can join NATO in due
It was
course.
made clear, actually, in the Putin interview that Clinton had been sympathetic to the idea when Putin had first put it to them, and then backed off.
And then his advisors apparently intervened and changed Clinton's mind.
It's not. The truth is that NATO with Russia in it would be a wholly different organisation from NATO without Russia. And the same with the European Union. The reason why there's never been any consideration of Russia joining the European Union is it would completely unbalance it. At the moment, Germany is the largest and most dominant country in the European Union. If Russia came in, that would change, and you can't see the Germans or anyone else much being particularly pleased by it. It won't happen. But the difficulty then was how do you integrate Russia into a European space of peace and prosperity without it being in either of these organisations? One of the things you don't do almost certainly, in my view, is say you're going to expand NATO into Ukraine, which pretty much everybody understood was a neutral space until about, 2000...
Until he invaded?
No, until about 2008, when George W. Bush suddenly announced that in Bucharest that he was going to encourage Ukraine and Georgia to join NATO, at which point we began...
But there would be no progress
after that, we were on the conveyor belts of this conflict.
Well, there you go. Clive says, please can you tell your panel, Clive says basically you're talking tosh, you're referencing Article 4 of NATO and it's Article 5, but it's not actually, and I'm sure Peter will correct me if I'm wrong, it's basically a combination of the two. Article 4 is when members get together and discuss potential threats and territorial compromise, and Article 5,
he's quite right.
off the back of Article 4, once you've consulted and all the rest of it, Article 5 is basically the attack one, attack all principle.
He's quite right. It was my mistake. But no, we all make them. I had actually been looking at another treaty this afternoon in which Article 4 is rather important, but that's my only excuse. There
you go. There's no flies on our Clive. He's paying attention. That's what we like. We like that, Clive. Anyway, look, there is so much more.
It's still useless, whatever number it has.
I want to talk to you.
Still very valuable.
Well, it's very valuable to those people that can't be bothered to pay their money into it. But anyway, I won't open that one again. Look, let's talk.
Same answer.
Let's stick with the forces then, shall we? Because after the break, I want to talk to you about the Navy. Do you think those sailors should have to have mandatory climate change training? Is that a good idea? Is it all par for the course, or is it a complete waste of time? Your thoughts. I'll see you in 2.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Chris, what is the preferred way in which the police go about their business at the moment? There's these two strands of thinking: evidence-based policing versus bobbies on the beat.
It's very, very difficult. The problem that police have got, basically, is that they're too thinly spread, and it's too much is expected of them. There's a long list, isn't it? Every month we hear police need to do more about this, police need to do more about that, and police do their best. They're overwhelmed with bureaucracy. I mean, when I was a young PC, if I took a shoplifter in, then I'd be in and out within an hour. You take a shoplifter in now, and you're doomed for the rest of your shift for 6 or 7 hours dealing with the bureaucracy. Police want to get back in those communities because community policing is really the core of policing. But such are the demands on their time at the moment, and the bureaucracy, and the fact that they are struggling now to retain experienced officers. People are hemorrhaging out of the police, and new recruits coming in haven't got that experience, and there's a good chance they may not stay anyway. So there's all sorts of problems. And for the Home Secretary to glibly say he wants more done, frankly, clearly shows he's got no understanding of the pressure police are under, and of course the constant criticism that they face across the board. Very rarely do you actually hear of police officers getting praised for acts of bravery or acts of compassion. So there's a problem with morale in the police force, and clearly a problem with the Home Secretary, who needs to get out there and talk to officers on the front line who frankly are struggling. And last night, of course, was a graphic example.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbers, keeping you company till 7. Columnist at the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens, alongside me, as is the former Labour advisor, Matt Larser. Carol says, Michelle, I'm watching you while we have our Valentine's dine-in dinner. That's very romantic, thank you. What a treat, what a pleasure to be able to share your intimate moments with you. I appreciate that. Peter says, please can you tell Peter Hitchens, the man who never made a mistake, never made anything. There is never any necessity to apologise. He's only human.
Lots of mistakes. You should apologise for them, though, because then you remember them better.
Paul says, on the NATO issue, he agrees with you. He gives you credit for what you're saying. Lots of people completely disagreeing with me, where I'm saying that people should step up and pay their bills. But luckily, there are some of you out there with basic common sense who do agree with me, that think if you don't pay your way, get out. That's all I'll say. Anyway, look, let's talk the Royal Navy, because now documents that have been obtained by the Telegraph basically suggest that all sailors in the Navy may be forced to attend online training for climate change. What do you think to this, Peter Hitchens? Is this all good? Is it par for the course, sensible, or is it a little bit off-piste?
Well, given that most of the Navy's ships are conked out, they have to think of something for the poor things to do, don't they? But that wouldn't seem to me. Perhaps they could learn how to splice the main brace or something of that kind instead. The thing about climate change is that it is now the ideology, the dogma of our nation, indeed of the Western world. It's like Marxism-Leninism in the old Soviet Union, when everybody used to have to attend classes in it. It is what you have to believe. And so, therefore, it's a mixture of religion and ideology. And if you dare not to believe in it, then you're in trouble, in which everybody must be indoctrinated. So the real problem is not whether they've got better things to do, perhaps not, given, as I say, that the ships won't move, but whether this should be the sort of country where dogma is taught to members of the armed forces, as indeed it's taught to and by teachers in schools and in universities and everything else. There is only one opinion, which is now valid. You don't get arrested for not holding it, because this is a marshmallow totalitarianism, not a hard one. But you will find, for instance, that your career suffers, or indeed you might, if you're in the local authority contracting business, you don't get contracts. Things will happen to you if you make it plain that you have not joined in believing with this stuff. And it is very, very menacing. And we all know the police have been indoctrinated in all kinds of things for years. And no doubt climate change is all part of it too. But this is a new religion.
Do you agree with that?
So I'm very against mandatory online tick box training of any description. As somebody who spent 15 years in the BBC and did, including a What is the North online mandatory training course, I'm against that. But the climate change is a geopolitical threat. It is therefore, in my view, sensible that the Royal Navy thinks about it, that in its strategic planning for how the world is changing, literally how the oceans are changing, that's one thing. But I'm not in favour of kind of forcing every rating, as it were, on every ship to go and log on.
How much of a threat do you regard it as?
Well, I think it depends whether we manage to curtail its continuation. But if the Royal Navy is sent to help out a Commonwealth country, which, half of it's underwater, I'm not saying necessarily that will happen, but this is perfectly reasonable sort of scenario planning for a military organisation. It's very different to getting everybody in the Royal Navy to sit and go tick, 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 on an online course.
If it should happen that at some point an officer in His Majesty's Navy was found to have been saying to those under his command that he didn't actually believe that global warming was man-made, what do you think should happen to him or her?
It certainly should not be a punishable offence. They shouldn't be... obviously it's a point of discussion in strategic discussions. I'm not in favour of criminalising...
But what do you think? No, I'm not talking about crime. I'm not talking about... This is a marshmallow totalitarianism. Amnesty International is never going to intervene when somebody who was going to be promoted to captain doesn't get promoted because they said the wrong thing. But that's what would happen to anybody who actually dared to say that. And in any other organisation that's remotely connected with government or the education system, anybody who actually expressed any doubt at all about the climate change religion would suffer.
I'm not in favour of groupthink, so I think there should be robust discussion allowed, and it shouldn't interfere with people's careers. I think that the science...
But it does.
It does. Absolutely, it does. Yes,
It does.
There's no doubt about that.
It does partly as a result of the movement which you support.
Well, I think because, in my view, climate change is real. I think the science supports it. I think it needs to be taken into account. But I don't think it should be a sort of semi sort of religious deity that you should have to sign up to.
That's what's happened. The BBC, for instance, does not acknowledge any dissenting view. If you dissent from the climate change religion, the BBC will not have you on.
Yeah, in my day, Nigel Lawson was wheeled out to, or Matt Ridley to put the anti-climate change case. But look, I think
that has officially stopped.
I think sceptical voices should still be heard in the conversation, while the overwhelming science should be listened to.
I look forward to seeing some.
I should be Director General, Peter.
I look forward to seeing some action from your movement to actually put that into practice, because I see no sign of it at the moment.
There's a key theme now, isn't there? And it runs through so many different organisations and groups and all the rest of it. ESG, people probably know what that is now. Environmental, social and governance, and a lot of this is all around what I would call a lot of tick boxes, but it really shapes and drives so much of corporate
I'm
activity.
against tick boxing. I'm in favour of thinking. I'm in favour of people thinking through, of looking at the impact. Some of it is needed.
It's more sinister than that, because organisations, a lot of them, if they need investment to grow, for example, the hoops that they have to go through to tick all of these different boxes, it's
and you end up with polluting companies. So they stick a green logo on the booklet. They get a tick box and they get the money, and you shouldn't have that.
Yeah, are you in favour of net zero?
With a sensible plan, yes.
You are in favour of net zero?
With a sensible plan.
With a sensible plan. Is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as a sensible net zero plan?
Of course there isn't. Yeah.
I'll come back to that in a second. I want to move on before I go to my next break. I want to ask you very quickly, should the government be spending money on TikTok, social media influencers, to try and get those guys to help stop people cross the channel? Nigel Farage, he's up at 7 o'clock. I think I can cross live to him now. Good evening, Nigel. A quick response from you on that one. Do you think that's a good use of taxpayers' funds?
Advertising, saying to people, please don't come to the UK. This is just another pathetic attempt. It won't stop anybody.
I didn't hear a word of that, but it sounded fascinating, and I look forward to watching you at 7 o'clock tonight. Thank you very much for that.
I'm kind of guessing you might be against it.
Well, let's ask you. What do you think to that?
Well, it's just laughable. It just isn't. It has nothing to do with the issue, does it? You're not going to persuade anybody to come or not to come to a country by TikTok, whatever it is.
Why not? Because a lot of these people are getting encouraged to come because of TikTok. So you've got all these videos.
Hang on, I mean, you'll have to give me the research on that.
I'll give you really good examples, actually. Some of my viewers, you'll probably be familiar with this. You've got these accounts where they're doing... It's almost like, I would almost call them, it's like an online travel brochure. You've got TikTok people now. You've got people going on TikTok. They're filming themselves. They've got all these montages from the moment they get onto their boat. You can see them often chucking their documents away. They're chilling out on their hotel bed. They're chucking wads of cash all around. So TikTok is absolutely being used to help entice people here.
So what's going to be on these anti-migration TikTok?
Pictures of Rwanda. In theory, presumably.
I mean, you could
empty Rwanda.
You could have pictures of standard British beach with the usual effluent pouring out onto it from a filthy river, I suppose.
I mean, look, I think
it just doesn't seem to be.
In headline, it sounds daft.
The impulse to travel to a richer country is a very strong impulse, which I strongly sympathise with, and I see exactly why people do it. I don't think it's going to be diminished one bit by a TikTok.
I think the headline, I can see how it gets people's, blood pressure raging. But actually, when you look at it, it's spend 30,000 quid. I'm not thinking it's guaranteed to work, but as Michelle says, TikTok is actually a big part of it. It's not perhaps how, it's how people listen to it. For 30 grand, which is about sort of 2 months of a migrant, one migrant to drop in the ocean.
30,000 quid is what some people take many, many years to pay in tax.
No,
out of very small income, so they have an absolute.
But what I mean is the percentage of the money that we are spending at the moment on dealing with the migrant crisis. If it does end up,
it's still
even one person coming, it's a net saving.
It's still somebody's money that they made by working.
Absolutely, but I think ultimately, if it stops 1 or 2 people coming, it would save itself. I don't think money should be thrown at this, but if it's worth seeing if it has an effect.
It does remind me ever so slightly of those vans that Theresa May sent.
Oh yeah.
I think it's more effective than those. They were in the country here, not where people were coming from.
I don't. Well, I'll wait for the research to come.
Are you not on TikTok yourself, Peter? Are you?
No.
You're missing out. I think you'd go down an absolute storm.
I think you'd be a sensation.
TikTok.
Well, I'll give it some consideration.
Yeah, we could be his digital managers.
We could go make the first one after the show.
Yes.
No.
With the Valentine.
I might try and work on it. Yeah, he could hold his little Valentine heart. So I think he'd absolutely fly on there. But look, if we've got to the level in this country where we're going to pay, even the very notion, by the way, I have to caveat this, even the notion that there are such a thing as social media influencers, even that makes me cringe a little bit because I think it's so cringeworthy. But anyway, we are where we are, I suppose, in this strange day and age. But anyway, if we have got to the point now where there is a strand of government policy which is about picking random people off social media and asking them, please, can you try and tell these people not to come here, then, I mean, that says a lot about where we actually are. And the problem that you've got, to Peter's point, what on earth are these guys actually going to say? Because if they tell the truth to their audience, what they'll be telling them is, guys, if you get on one of these boat things in France, you absolutely will be picked up halfway through by a charity or whoever. You'll be taken over to England. You'll be put up probably in a 4-star country estate. You'll get all of healthcare stuff. You'll have a bit of pocket money. You'll probably be able to go out actually and start delivering pizzas and working on the black market actually. So there you go. I mean, how is that going to deter absolutely anybody? So actually, if anyone's listening from the government, I do urge you actually to consider how on earth you can start making this a less attractive proposition in the first place, and perhaps that might save you a few bob on so-called social media influencers. I've got to say, that does make me cringe a little bit, that whole notion. But whilst it makes me cringe, I do, my gut instinct is telling me we could make a TikTok star out of Peter Hitchens. Never say never. Stranger things have happened, Peter, and people make an absolute fortune.
Not often. I do sometimes say never.
Philip says, well, to be honest, Michelle, I think TikTok would stop more boats than Rishi. Ravi says the only influencers that are making any difference are the Tories by dangling the carrot of 4-star hotels and all the rest of it. I've got to say, I'm not sure how effective you think that TikTok scenario would be. we're talking about the Royal Navy as well, about whether or not they should have these climate change things. Stephen says there shouldn't be any compulsory climate change courses at all, irrespective of the sector. Some people believe it's true, but other people don't. To Peter's point as well, kind of different opinions are often suppressed, aren't they? Jason says ships are responsible, surely, for huge amounts of emissions. So is there a contradiction there? I don't know, you tell me. Robert says there's so much madness now. Lots of it is a nasty virus infecting all of our great institutions. Government needs to get a backbone and ban this madness. I mean, to be honest, the government could do with banning an awful lot of things, actually, but would you support that? Because a lot of people are more in favour of a smaller government that intervenes less, are they not? Let me know your thoughts. There is a lot I want to talk to you about after the break. I want to talk about so much. How do I get Peter Hitchens on TikTok? I might work on that one during the break, but lots more. I want to talk about planning. Should you need planning permission to extend your property? I don't know, maybe a loft conversion or something like that. Michael Gove is consulting on perhaps moving that out of the way, clearing the way for you to essentially be able to do lots more to your property. Is that a good idea or not?
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yep.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially, just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, you know, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, you know, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Peter Hitchens alongside me, as is Matt Larser. Barbara says, please can you tell Peter Hitchens you've made her Valentine's Day being on here tonight? Oh, Barbara, he doesn't like it. He doesn't take it as a compliment, I've got to tell you.
Anyway. Is there one for me? No.
Oh, has Matt made anyone's Valentine's night out there? Where's your mum? Isn't she watching?
No, sadly not with us anymore, otherwise I've known.
All right, sorry.
So I didn't
Get a
like
loved
it.
one
I
to
just
write in.
sighed.
He sighed. I mean, you can't even compliment some people, can you? I don't know. Stephen.
No, you can't.
Why? What's wrong? What's the matter?
Do you not like
Why don't you
compliments?
like
Say everything was wrong. No, I don't like compliments, no.
You don't like compliments?
No.
Oh, well, I can read a lot of emails out there not complimentary, if that'll make you feel any better,
I'll
chaps.
enjoy that.
Stephen says, we've just been talking about whether or not we should pay money on this TikTok campaign. Stephen says, I've got a better idea. Don't spend money on TikTok influencers to stop people crossing the channel. Find a drain, pour the money down there instead, because it seems like that's what we do with pretty much everything else in this country. Oh, you're a harsh man, Stephen. Anyway, let's talk housing, because Michael Gove, he has upset a few people today and delighted others, because he's now trying to get on top of the housing situation. You'd almost think it was an election year, wouldn't you? Anyway, he has now put plans into consultation to ask whether or not we should be able to extend our properties, essentially with no planning permission. It could be one of those L-shaped extensions, a bigger loft conversion, and so on and so forth. Where are you, Peter? Is this a good idea or not?
It's horrifying. I've long said that the future of Europe is probably that the whole place will look like Istanbul, a vast streetscape of concrete, plastic, petrol fumes, and no trees to be seen. It's the way the development of much of Europe now seems to be going. No relief from it at all. The ideal of the suburb, the garden city ideal of Ebenezer Howard, of houses with gardens set among trees, is a very fine one. It's a very good way to live. It's been a huge success. But
socialist idea.
It simply doesn't work. I didn't say it wasn't. It simply doesn't work. If people are allowed to build what they like, if your neighbour can suddenly build right up to his boundary, overshadowing you, look at the constant tragic disputes which go up between neighbours over the movement of a fence or a drive, or suddenly being overlooked. This would then be happening all the time. The bad temper and the bitterness which it would engender would be gigantic. And for what? The problems of this country are not that we don't have too few houses. So we have too many people. We've encouraged to create a low-wage economy. We've encouraged an enormous amount of immigration. We continue to do so without any real thought about where people are going to live. And at the same time, to make this even worse, we've encouraged a policy of widespread divorce, which has created an even greater demand for houses, and the country can't sustain it. There aren't places where people are going to be prepared to live, where you can build enough houses. We really have to start working out pretty soon how we're going to end the mass immigration and stabilise our population. But Michael Gove is not going to solve anything by allowing your neighbour or mine to build the crisis.
I think we can agree it's not going to solve the housing crisis, absolutely. And you're, Michelle, at an election offering, they've had 14 years to sort out, or at least make some progress on housing, and their record is absolutely dismal. And I think there's a serious element, as Peter says, we've seen sort of murders happen over disputes about fences. Now, if you can just build, 50% of your green space can be taken up under these, the proposal that they're consulting on, I think we're going to see a lot more really unpleasant neighbour disputes. What we need to do is regard housing in this country as being about housing and not as an asset, so that it's about, and we need to build more houses, and we also need to have a sensible housing market where we don't all sort of sit and pray that the house prices are going to go up, where we have one where actually people can get on the housing market.
Well, I said here a couple of weeks ago that what we really need is to revive the council estates, and we need to build new...
We agree, Peter, absolutely.
We do.
We need to build more social housing.
They need to be carefully planned, as they originally were, and the ones that they built, the very good ones they built before the tower block.
Totally.
Back in the 1950s.
Old Morrisonian estates in London.
Do that, but just allowing people to build what they like. And it's not just the neighbour disputes and the claustrophobia that everyone will feel. It's also, of course, the effect on flooding, because more and more there will be less and less places for the water to go. The absence of greenery, which is unhealthy, the noise, everything else, it will just...
And building standards may not be applied as well.
I don't know what Michael Gove thinks he's doing.
Trying to get a cheap headline.
Well, he's an intelligent person. I've known him for years. He's not stupid, but surely he must see that this policy has many more disadvantages than advantages.
Well, it seems he doesn't, but he should do.
Well, maybe he'll listen in and he'll come to the conclusion.
Well, we're going to consultation, so you'll be able to get your say.
But via TikTok, no doubt.
Yeah, via TikTok. I've got to say, you guys are absolutely divided. So many people, Kevin says, if you do away with planning, essentially you're going to end up with estates looking like shanty towns. Matt says there should always be planning consent and an opportunity for neighbours to voice concerns. Otherwise, your neighbour could essentially make your house unsellable or lose value. John says, I'm appalled and amazed at many planning approvals, but we definitely need them. We shouldn't have a free-for-all. Yeah, you're really kind of divided. I've got to say, what if you've got neighbours that are an absolute pain in the behind that will do every single thing possible to try and stop you just having basic extensions done to your property? Of course, everyone needs a right to essential light and all the rest of it, but sometimes neighbours can be an absolute pain, can't they? Wouldn't you welcome the opportunity to be able to turn your back on them and just do whatever you want?
That's the view you take until you yourself are confronted with neighbours
True.
who want to do things you don't want to do, and then you become the pain.
Yeah.
It's a simple failure to see that there are two sides to every question there, I think.
True. What have I started with Valentine's Day, by the way? Because now people are now writing in about you.
Oh.
I almost feel like Cilla Black. Matthew is a lovely guy, says Donna, and would make someone a lucky person. A very lovely Valentine's. But Martin says, if you want a Valentine's, Matthew, you've got to undo the top button on your shirt.
Martin's obsessed with my top button. He's messaged him before about my top button.
Oh, Martin. I dread to think
that was an immediate
response. I know. It was very keen. It was very keen.
People pleaser.
Yeah, a very fast response there to Martin's suggestion. I dread to think what's going to happen during the break. The rest of your buttons are absolutely
you
fine.
slightly like an Iranian diplomat when you have your top buttons done up and no tie.
Cool, blimey. Never mind politics and defence and all the rest of it. The real debate is whether or not a man should button his shirt up all the way right to the very top. What do you reckon to that? One who says we can't cover a wide range of things on this programme here. After the break, I want to talk to you about lots more things. I'll be bringing you into the conversation, of course, but I also want to talk to you about delivery drivers. They're on strike, the gig economy. Let's talk about that after the break.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Claire, you want to talk by cars growing by a couple of centimetres a year?
Yeah, well, 1 centimetre every 2 years.
Okay.
It's unrelenting because the people are so fixated on the big SUVs. The sales have gone through the roof, and yet it's James Nix, the analyst for Transport and Environment Campaign, said the author of the report on the trend said, spurred on by sales of the largest SUVs, vehicles are getting wider every year. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, it means that our roads weren't...
comfortable ride, beautiful engines. I mean, it's luxury, it's gorgeous.
Well, as I know, I used to have two, but I don't...
You used to have two SUVs?
Well, one SUV at a time, but I had two brands of them. But I'd no longer drive in London now because I just don't see the point, because of the ULEZ, because of the, you know, you can turn down a thing and get fined.
Parking spaces, whatever.
Yeah, the growth in car size also causes issues for their drivers. The report found that largely luxury SUVs, which are about 2 metres wide, no longer fit in off-street parking.
That's true.
They also leave too little space for passengers to get in and out of the vehicles in typical off-street spaces, and they're about 2.4 metres wide, the report found. And I'll tell you, I was stuck in a bus last night trying to get home, and the buses couldn't move because the streets were too crammed with all of these massive cars either side.
Chelsea tractors.
And it was gridlocked.
Yeah, but maybe they're not the problem, maybe the buses are the problem.
The buses take people to their place of work and get
I'd
them
like
home.
to know when, because when I go through London, all I see is empty buses.
Oh, you're lucky. Every time I'm on one, they're full.
Well, they're obviously only full at rush hour. You see, the thing is, property developers, when they do high-rise car parks or, you know, they build a multiplex cinema and there's a car park attached to it, that's not my fault that I can't fit into their space. It's their fault. So
well, it's all driven by money, isn't it? The more spaces that they have,
exactly.
the more people they can get.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. Peter Hitchens alongside me, as is Matt Larser. Let's try and squeeze one more in before we bid you farewell, shall we? Because tonight, thousands of delivery drivers are going on strike. Long story short, this is all part of the gig economy. Most of these people will be self-employed. They're saying basically they don't feel that they get, whether it's pay and conditions, at the level that they believe that they deserve them. What do you make this gig economy? Good idea or not?
Well, it's good that plenty of people have work to do as a result of it. It's not often very good work, and it's obviously not very well paid work. I sympathise with these people. I think that the freedom to withdraw your labour is one of the key freedoms of a proper free society, and they should be allowed to exercise it. And I wish them luck in getting a better living as a result. We all have to pay more for our deliveries as a result, but so what? You can't live by hoping that other people will be paid too little.
I mean, viva the delivery drivers, I say. They're mostly Brazilians, the particular action today. It's big lessons for the... I mean, I'm Peter, you know, a socialist utopia, we're going to have council estates, proper paid work and remunerated. We'll make a lefty of you, or turn you to the left, yeah. But, I mean, I think seriously, there's an issue here for the trade unions, because the McDonald's went on strike and the Bakers Union was trying to organise young McDonald's workers, 16, 17-year-olds working at McDonald's. And do you know what they had to do? They had to fill out 13 forms to join the Bakers Union. So I actually think there's something really great about people self-organising, putting their demands out there, and good luck to them, as Peter said.
But the modern trade unions, when I was industrial correspondent back in the 70s and the 80s, the trade unions were proper organisations which organised for workers. Now they've become huge, great pressure groups for government policy, and they're utterly uninterested in this kind of thing. And they've left everything to legislation and human relations departments. They've forgotten how to be union.
Yeah, I think there is an issue about they've forgotten how to recruit in the private sector with new areas of work.
They don't know how to
good on the delivery drivers.
I think new organisations may well spring up as a result. But I think it's a vital freedom for people to have, and I will never stand against it. I mean, obviously there are limits to it. I've always said, for instance, that nurses, just as an example, should never go on strike. But there are people who can. On the other hand, any sensible employer should arrange things so that strikes are very rare.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sign of a bad employer if there's a strike.
Well, let me know what you think.
Usually, yeah.
One of my colleagues, I shall keep him nameless, I don't want to embarrass him, he was telling me about this story today, and he was saying he's appalled at how little these drivers get paid. So I pointed it out to him that on these apps, there's an option to be able to tip these drivers. It goes directly to them, and I asked him, well, do you ever do that then? If you think your driver is so badly paid, do you bolster his wages then? I bet you can guess what the answer to that was. An absolute big fat no.
But a lot of people do, on the other hand.
Well,
it isn't universal. I mean, there are a lot of people who want other people to pay higher taxes and other people to pay higher prices. But a lot of people do, given the chance. And I think most people would, if they found the prices had gone up to pay these people better, would say, OK, it's not actually as if you have to order food by Deliveroo.
No, but I'm a little bit... This whole tipping...
Do you tip, though, Michelle?
Well, I think this tipping, it's gotten a little bit out of control. If you go to a bar these days and you buy a drink, you're walking to the bar, I'm ordering from you, all you're doing is passing it, and there's a tip, and I'm like, I don't think so.
I think one of the key things is about the minimum wage. So the drivers are saying they're not getting what's now called the national living wage, whereas in a bar, obviously everybody should be paid that before tips, so that which you don't get in America.
Yeah, but do you know what, employers? Just pay your staff properly. Why should customers have to fund your greed and your profit margin? Just pay your staff. Anyway, look, lots of people getting in touch. Lee says, I've never heard anything so absurd in all my life as taxpayer money getting spent on TikTok stars. Stop it. If that is the most absurd thing you've ever heard in your life...
It's certainly not the biggest waste of government money.
I don't know where you've been, because I can tell you there's a lot more absurd things than that going on. Who else is this? Nick has said, outrageous, selfish attitude to planning you have got, Michelle. I was only playing devil's advocate. I was just asking, what about if you didn't like your neighbours? I'm not saying it related to me. I was just putting it out there, everybody. Charles says, I absolutely love you and watch you every night, Michelle, but please, no more bare arms ever again. They're only arms, Charles. Come on now.
I think you've got a great Valentine's look.
Ken, lots of people agreeing about your top button. Martin's been back in touch. He says, thank you very much. It's made
But if
his
someone
night.
if someone now tweets in and says, Can you do it up again? Will you do it up again?
Oh, God.
We need a poll.
Ken has said, Michelle, can you make my Valentine's night and give me a wink? No, I cannot, Ken. This is not OnlyFans. Thank you very much. Someone's been in touch on Twitter saying, Peter Hitchens, when his smile when he gave him your chocolate, it was perfection, says Phil.
And that would have done well on TikTok.
Says Phil. Anyway, look, that's all I've got time for. Don't go anywhere. It's actually go out, enjoy your Valentine's night. Nigel Farage is up next. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. There'll be further rain to come on Thursday for many of us. It'll be another mild and cloudy day as well. We've got very mild air that's moved up from the south, and that'll be pushing north through the evening, bringing many of us another mild night tonight. However, there's still a lot of rain to come from the south and west as well. That rain will push across parts of Northern Ireland, many areas of Wales, northern England, and then it will persist across many areas of Scotland throughout Thursday morning. Further south of that, across more central and southern areas of England, it will be drier by the morning, but there'll still be some drizzly rain and some low cloud across the hills and across the coast as well. So another murky start to the day, but another very mild start. The rain will turn quite persistent through Thursday, particularly across southwestern Scotland, but also in the afternoon across South Wales, as well as the parts of the southwest of England too. There's rain warnings in force here, so there could be some travel disruption and water on the roads in these areas. In the south and east, though, we escape the rain through much of the day, and it will be a very mild day. Could reach 17 degrees if we do get any sunshine. The rain clears to the east through Friday morning, leaving many of us with a much drier and better day. Some sunny spells, particularly for more central areas of England and Wales, and temperatures climbing towards 15 or 16 degrees once again. Staying mild on the weekend, however, there is some further rain to come, particularly through Saturday night and into Sunday. That's all for now. See you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
So a new poll has revealed that Gen Z or Gen Z, I don't know how I'm supposed to say it, and British boys and men are more likely to believe that feminism has done more harm than good when compared with older respondents. So the polling also found that a quarter of UK males aged 16 to 29 believe it's harder to be a man than a woman, with 1 in 5 looking favourably upon controversial influencer Andrew Tate. 37% of them also agree that the phrase toxic masculinity is unhelpful. So, with Gen Z boys increasingly holding this view, has feminism done more harm than good? Let me know your thoughts. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com, tweet me @gbnews, and make sure you take part in our poll. But I'll bring you those results shortly. Going head-to-head on this tonight, our author and commentator Anna May Mangan and YouTuber and social media influencer Pearl Davies. Both of you, thank you very much. Pearl, I'll start with you. Has feminism done more harm than good, especially when it comes to these Gen Z boys?
Yes, it has. Feminism really has turned into a bunch of crybaby women that want to complain that we're not given equal opportunity when really women are given more opportunity than men. And so, yeah, I would say feminism is a hate group and it's a bunch of crybaby women.
Anna, would you like to come back to that? Crybaby women feminism, apparently.
So we've got a right lad with us tonight with Pearl and her opinions, haven't we? How could it possibly do harm? Pearl wouldn't do. I hope you vote. I assume you do. I hope you're not chained to the kitchen sink at home. I'm not sure if you've got a job, so I don't know very much about you, but you're probably, if there's a bloke doing the same thing as you, you're probably earning less than him. So of course feminism is something that it got us the vote in the first place, and it's still doing a power of good. It's just whingy men, and actually I changed that. They're lads, they're not men.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Over the last couple of years, you've heard me raise concerns about the exploding number of barber shops over the country. Well, GB News today went out on a raid, and guess what? An illegal immigrant was working in the shop. I'll be joined today by Anne Widdecombe, former Prisons Minister, as we get yet another damning report about the state of Britain's prisons, and we ask, what is their purpose? And astonishing and worrying scenes outside Tobias Ellwood's house, Member of Parliament for Bournemouth Conservative last night with 100 people, pro-Palestine protesters. It raises questions once again about the safety of our Members of Parliament. Plus, I'm going to tell you something about the judge yesterday. The judge, remember the three women who had the paragliders on the back of their jackets? They were found guilty by a jury and led off by a judge. Some astonishing news about that judge. All to come in the next hour. But first, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is that Labour says there are strong checks on would-be MPs after a second Labour candidate was suspended following accusations of anti-Semitism. Former MP Graham Jones was reportedly recorded saying British people who volunteer to fight with the Israeli Defence Forces should be locked up. And his suspension came only a day after Labour was forced to suspend and withdraw its backing for by-election candidate Azhar Ali. He was recorded suggesting Israel had used the October Hamas attack as a pretext to invade Gaza. So Keir Starmer has pledged to root out anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Meanwhile, a comedian has been banned from a London theatre after Jewish audience members were reportedly hounded out of the show. Paul Curry's been accused of encouraging the crowd to chant and shout at an Israeli ticket holder after he refused to stand and applaud a Palestinian flag. Soho Theatre has apologised and says it's looking into the incident. The rate of inflation remains at 4% today. That's the same as December last year, despite economic forecasters predicting a rise. Figures from the Office for National Statistics found that food prices fell on a monthly basis for the first time since September 2021. But the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, said today the figure was misleading because the Conservatives could not fix the economy because they were the reason it's broken. The Prime Minister insisted the economy, though, had turned a corner. Pictures have come to us of a knife-wielding man who's been jailed for life after a group of off-duty officers intervened in his attack. If you're watching on television, take a look at this hold my beer moment. Footage from the scene in South London shows Joseph Jimenez repeatedly trying to slash another man with a large knife. Seeing the incident unfold, off-duty officers charge towards the attacker and separate him from the victim. Southwark Police have called the action heroic and nothing short of exceptional. Jimenez has been sentenced to a total of 12 months at a Young Offenders Institute. Now, crossbow owners could face police checks under government plans to stop the weapons being used in violent attacks. It comes after convicted stalker Bryce Hodgson was shot dead by police last month after he broke into a London home armed with a crossbow. There's currently no registration system for owning one and no need for a licence. Now, it's Valentine's night tonight, but you might want to